Happy Sunday, everyone. Just going for a quick stroll in Sydney on a Sunday arvo, walking up alongside the tram tracks besides the Royal Randwick racecourse. And it's got me thinking about a couple of issues that have happened during the week, and I just thought rather than write them down and post them, I just wanted to share a video with you because it's just really got to me as a parent who's brought up two now adult children and an Australian who's lived here all his life, about where we're heading, about the future of our country, the future of our children, the futures of our grandchildren with the current state of play in this country. Albanese has just put forward the election date next month, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens because this is really, in my mind, a very serious time in our history and one of the most important elections we've ever had. A couple of things have come to mind, and as I was walking alongside the racecourse, I was just outside the famous milepost at Randwick, the 1600 metre mark, or the milepost, and I've seen some of the most famous races here, and I reckon in my youth I spent probably, not exaggerating, probably 50% of my youth was spent down here coming to races with mum and dad. Even the school I went to, I'll give a little plug, Little Coogee Prep up at Randwick there, we actually had all our school sport in the middle there. So in the old days that had a big sort of oval, not an oval, but playing fields where you could play football and cricket, and we used to come down and play all that competition sport down here against the other schools, and house cricket, house football, all that sort of stuff. So I've spent a lot of time down here. I've worked in stables down here. I've had horses get away from me down here. But it just got me thinking about our country, and I'll just turn, and where we're heading. This week, two things really disturbed me. First one was the arrest of a gentleman goes by the name of Billboard Chris up in a Brisbane mall. Now, Chris is an advocate for children's human rights. He's very stern on a lot of the trans children issues. And look, I probably agree with 80 or 90% of what he says, especially on these blockers and things that permanently change children where they can't make up their own minds. Now, what he was doing, he's been going around the world very peacefully and silently protesting in different countries. He's from Canada, and this week he's actually got a court case coming up with the commissioner. I've just forgotten her name, the American girl that wants to tell everyone what to do and what time to go to bed and what time we have to have breakfast, lunch and dinner. So he's got to go to court over a post he put on. Anyway, he was up in Brisbane and he was doing a silent protest with his sandwich board, which he wears around his body. A couple of radical left rat bags came up to him and said, "Oh, you can't be here," blah blah, usual stuff that goes on. Anyway, the council the council rangers come up and said, "Look, mate, we've had a few complaints. You need to leave." So, obviously true to his values, Chris said, "Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not leaving. I'm just silently protesting like our it's my God-given right to do that in a free democratic society." So anyway, the council worker, rambled on as they do and made up a little bit of, well, not a little bit, but a whole bunch of BS, and then called the police. And to cut a long story short, they came and rambled on for 10 minutes, and Chris wouldn't budge, and he said, "Look, I stand on my values, I stand on my principles, and I'm not doing anything wrong," which he wasn't. He was just doing a protest in the mall there. So they said, "Look, we'll have to arrest you," which they did, to which they took him away and then took him to the station, so on and so forth. I thought to myself, where are we heading? And I know a lot of this stuff's been going on, but when one just gets to you, or a couple just gets to you and just hits the hits the spot. And where are we heading in this great country that we've built, the best country in the world? We built modern Australia from nothing. Yes, we had our Indigenous people here, God bless their hearts, but they're our Indigenous people. I'm talking about glory to them, but I'm talking about modern Australia. We built the country into the best country, in the best modern country in the world, democratic country in the world. And I'm just going, where are we heading? What legacy are we going to be leaving to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren? The second issue that really absolutely cut me in half was centred around that young bloke who was at the Albanese and Chalmers press conference either yesterday or the day before. You've probably seen it on social media, or I don't think it's even been put on mainstream media, of course, because they don't want to show it. But, you know, he was there and he flew out of the barriers, excuse the pun, being outside the 1600 metre mark. He flew out of the barriers and said to Chalmers and Albanese, well, you know, you've ruined, I'm a young bloke. Basically, he said, you've ruined my life. Well, you're ruining my life. You're ruining our lives. The cost of living, immigration, all the other stuff that you've thrown on us. What are you going to do about it? And he was very forthright when he was saying it. And he's got every right to say it. But of course, the weak, woke lefties, press that were there, and the weak, woke lefty security guards they'd organised, it was a coup. They escorted him out of the joint. You know, and that was, and then, you know, obviously it proceeded on, and, you know, the weak, woke left questions like, oh, Mr. Albanese, you know, how much are you going to give to the woke society this year? You know, all this, the rubbish they carry on with. You know, nothing to do with our futures, nothing to do with the building of this country, nothing to do with the real economics of this country. And I just looked at this young kid, and I just, you know, I've got, my kids are 30 and 29 now, and I've had the privilege of, you know, being a parent, watching them grow up, and love them to death. And it just, when I see young, was one thing that really just shreds me as a human being. And we're all different. But when I see young people that seem to have no hope or feel like they've got no hope, it just cuts me in half. It gets to my soul. It really does. And that's what seeing that yesterday really cut me in half. And I just, to think, as a parent, now at my age, I'm nearly 60 years of age, to think, the thought that the way we're going, that I look at my children, well, they're not my adult children, and all other parents looking at their adult children or their teenage kids growing up, or their kids, thinking they'll never have what we were able to have. You know, I'm talking about the opportunities to create what you want, to do what you want, within the boundaries of the law, of course. The opportunity to save for a decent property, to live where you want to live. Do you know? And these scoundrels, and I'll throw the Liberals in too, because I'm not in love with them at the moment either. I think they need to definitely get back to the middle ground. They've gone too far left. And I want them to get back to Menzies, you know, the founder, Sir Robert Menzies' ideology of small government and free enterprise. But they've gone too woke and too left. And I just go, the thought of me thinking that, geez, there's no hope for my kids to, you know, start a business and be prosperous, to be able to buy a property and be prosperous, to have their own opinions and be able to feel safe in an environment where they can express their opinions, whether people agree with them or not. The old saying, you know, and I'll die on this is the hill I'll die on, I mightn't agree with what everyone says, but I'll defend their right to the death to say it. And where's that going? Where is that? Is that it? Have we got that? Is that still in this country? Is that still in Australia? We've got a whole bunch of radical lefts, you know, which comprises of the Teals, the Labor Party, which has been hijacked by the radical left side of it, and the Greens, that just want to tell everyone what to do, tell everyone that we'll keep you nice and safe, and everything's hunky-dory, and you just live in a box, and then we'll look after you, give you some money, and then, you know, by the time you're 80 years of age, you'll jump off the planet. Is that life? Is that really what Australian people want for their kids? It's not what I want for my kids. It's not what I bred into my kids. I'll tell you what I bred into my children. And, you know, no one comes from a perfect upbringing. But what I bred, or tried to breed into my children, is stand on your own 2 feet. Go and chase your dreams. Start a business if you want to. Be what you want to be. Express yourself. You know? And then if you're broken-hearted, which will happen, everyone gets, you know, once, 2, 3 times in your life if you're broken-hearted. I don't care if you're crying, living in a caravan down the south coast for 12 months, that you're that broken-hearted. Once it's over, you have to move on with your life, because you can't stay a victim. That's the worst crime a person can put on another person, is to perpetuate professional victimhood. It's I really believe that. And we're seeing that with the radical left. They want everyone to be victims. Oh, you poor little darlings, we'll look after you. You know, safe and effective, you know, during the last 5 years, all that rubbish. We see where that, we've all seen where that took us. I don't want to say too much about that. There was that mad radical idiot Zuckerberg will probably censor the video, so I can't say too much. But you understand what I'm talking about. So I've walked past the race course here, and I just go, this was the most egalitarian, or every racetrack in Australia was the most egalitarian place you could go to. Now what I mean by that is that back in the day in Australia, you could be born with nothing. You could be born without any shoes on the streets of Darlinghurst, Surrey Hills, Redfern, Paddington, and still make it in life, you know? And some stories come to mind just looking at this magnificent course here and the history of this course. You know, Tommy Smith, the greatest trainer we've ever seen in the history of this country, the great TJ Smith, the father of Gay Waterhouse. He was from Wagga. He was a jockey, and then he wasn't that good at it, or he got too heavy. Then he went to training, and he fluked he didn't fluke it, but he got a little horse called Bragger who they couldn't break in. So he said, I'll have a crack at it. And then he broke the horse in, and it turned out to be a good horse, and that's how he started. And then he came up to Sydney, and he became not just I probably believe he was the greatest trainer the world's ever seen. And some of the great champions he had were horses like, you know, Tulloch, Kingston Town, Bounding Away. Oh, I could go through them on and on and on, but that's just a few that come to mind. You know, Frank Packer. Frank Packer won something like 50 quid in, you know, 1914 or something at Hobart Racetrack, paid his fare up to Sydney, and then he was able to start his magazines to build that magazine and newspaper empire, the Packers. You know, millions of stories like this. You know, people that have gone to the races and won money and been able to start businesses, and plenty of people lost money too, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of hearts that have been broken on this course as well. But, you know, just the stories. And when you went to the races, there was something like 300 bookmakers on track. So when I was coming here as a kid, makers right along the straight there and in the middle of the course. And, you know, some of these people came from nothing. You know, Harry Barrett, for example, was a car salesman on Parramatta Road, made his money out of cars and became a bookmaker, biggest bookmaker in Australia. I remember Bill Hurley used to pick me up in his old Ford. I went to school with his son, Brett. Shout out to Brett and Bill, God bless you. Hope you're well. They used to pick me up. Bill used to pick me up on the way to school at Clovelly in his old little brown Ford. He was a little provincial bookmaker in those days, and then went on to become the biggest bookmaker in Australia. You know, just these stories that come to mind walking past this famous course. My great grandfather, who was probably pioneered race riding overseas. Before he was Australia's greatest rider in his day, and then he went overseas, rode all around the world, South Africa, India, England, and took his son, my grandfather, with him. And my great grandfather started from nothing. He rode him bareback. He was riding him as a kid. He used to jig school down at the rocks, and he used to used to jump over the fence in the old paddocks down there. And he used to jump on the horses and ride them bareback. And you know, old Nunk became one of Australia's greatest riders. You know, first rider to win the Melbourne Cup 3 times. And then he was able then to travel around the world with his son, my pop, who did his apprenticeship in England and became the top young rider in England. And so these are the stories in our history, in our heritage in this country. There's thousands of them, but I've just got to be honest about it. I don't want to sound too sad, but I think it comes in times in every generation's life where we just have to stand up. We have to stand up as a nation and say this has gone too far for too long, and it's just not on anymore. You know, I'll be voting for one of the freedom parties at the next election. There's 4 choices there. We've got the Trumpet of Australia's party, Jetta Rennick's Australia First party, One Nation, and the Liberal Democrats, not to be mixed or confused with the Liberal Party, the Libertarian Democrats. So there's choices there we can vote. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be the next government, but we've got to make a start somewhere. As I said, you know, first and foremost, I'll be putting Labor last. Labor, the Teals, the Green, on my Senate vote and on my House of Representatives vote on the ballot sheets, they will be coming last, no matter who I put before them. Now, whether you're still going to vote Liberal, you've still got faith in the Liberal Party, or you want to vote for one of the freedom parties or freedom independents, that's fine. And we can make change, because under our preference system, the parties that you don't want to get in, you just put them last on the ballot sheets. So if you don't want to vote for Labor, you agree with what I'm saying, you don't want to vote for the Teals, you don't want to vote for the Greens, when you've got your Senate ballot paper and your House of Reps ballot paper, when you're going through the preference system, you put them last. If you want to vote for the Freedoms, you put them above the Liberal Party. So you put the Freedom parties first, the Liberals, and then Labor, Greens and Teals must come last under the preference system. You don't put the Freedom parties and go, oh, then I'll put Labor. No, you have to put Labor last if you agree with what I'm saying. So, look, that's the end of what I want to say. I just felt the need to address the Australian people. I feel really strongly about this. I love our children. You know, I love my children. I love my brother's children. I want to see us prosper. I want to see us live in the land of freedom and fairness and the opportunity to have a go, like Australia was built on. The reputation around the world was have a go. You know, but we've been hijacked. We've been hijacked through our institutions, the universities, the schools, of this radical, woke, globalist, left ideology. And I'll just leave you with this, and I did do a post on it before. You can check on my Facebook page. The top 6 portfolios currently are held by ministers with no more than 4.5 years total life work experience outside of a union or the Labor Party. I'll say it again. Albanese, Chalmers, Penny Wong, Tony Burke, that absolute treacherous scoundrel Bowen, the climate change minister. I've just forgot the other one. Anyway, the top 6 portfolios are held by people that have had no more than 4.5 years external experience outside of the Labor Party or a union. They're the people who are sitting down in Canberra at the moment making these decisions on behalf of you and your children's futures. Just think about that tonight. If you can just take one thing away from what I've said today, just think about that. Just take that away tonight when you're lying in bed on Sunday night. Just have a think about that. Now, if you were running a company, you're a CEO of a public company, do you think that's a resume to put someone in to run your company? Or run a public company? Because let's face it, they are running the biggest economy in the country. So we really have to think about this next election. For me, it's always been about family, freedom, Almighty God, spirituality, sovereignty, the protection of this country. That's what it's about for me. They're my principal values, and freedom, and our children's futures. You know? So God bless everyone. Just felt the need to say that. I think it's really, really important. And hopefully we can make some, or start to make some changes. Because if we do that, if we start voting on these independents and these freedom parties, we will start getting more of these people in the Senate and the House of Reps. That will eventually grow, and that will give us the power to have the balance of power in the Senate and the House of Reps. So when these radical nut jobs want to make all these restrictions and polarise us with all this mad ideology that's just all about restriction and control, we will have the balance of power to knock them back. And that's what we need to do. We need to make a start, and we need to send a message to these 2 major parties that we're not going to stand for this anymore. We're going to make a stand. It's about our children's futures, and we're actually going to make real change. God bless everyone, and cheers.